Welcome to FO Talks. With me is Singh and Huyler again. Stephen is an extraordinary intellectual. He is a fantastic author. And I have just finished his book, which he very kindly sent me, called Meeting God. So, Stephen, after reading your book, it seems you're almost godlike in your writing. So am I meeting God today?
Hardly that. I just, I love the craft of writing.
Excellent. Yeah. And we are going to discuss how practical Hinduism still works in India. And one of the things that has blown me away, and I've just finished your book 5 minutes ago or 10 minutes ago, apart from the quality of writing, is the extraordinary photography and the fact that you have been north, south, east, west. You've been to n number of temples. You've covered all sorts of rituals. You've dived into high philosophy as to what is Hinduism, Shaivism, Vaishnavism, Varna, and you've chronicled painstakingly local beliefs. So without further ado, tell us, how does Hinduism actually work? What is practical Hinduism?
For me, it's just been the remarkable good fortune of being invited into many Indian homes and into shrines, into temples that are very rarely visited by outsiders. And I come in always with an attitude of respect and no sense of superiority or that my culture is in any way better. I don't feel that. I don't believe that. So I think that opens others to me and me to others. And when I am there, what I am experiencing when I'm in India and I'm in villages or towns or cities, I witness. And even more than witness, I am deeply affected. I experience the sense of what devotion is for common women and men, for the people of India, rather than seeing Hinduism through the Brahminical lens of the scriptures or the many books that are written about Hindu practice and belief.
Or the anthropological lens.
Anthropological or
how wonderful
historians or whatever. That to me is minor, or it's often misleading. And for me, it must be experiential. And when I write,
so let me stop you. Yes, I get it where you're coming from. You're coming from a place of experience, of sincere engagement, of honesty, not just intellectual honesty, but cultural connection, empathy, all of that. My question, however, is how would you describe, I'm not going to use the word define because that would be too Judeo-Christian. What would you say is practical Hinduism? Describe it to us. Paint us a picture.
For me, it's a sense that the sacred is in everything and everywhere. It's indivisible from any aspect of life. Everything is worthy of acknowledgement for its sacred value. While as my experience of the Christianity that I was raised with and my experience of Judeo-Muslim religion is a division between the sacred and the rest of existence, with many exceptions. I mean, there's mystical Christianity, there's mystical Judaism and mystical Islam, but Hinduism, there's not that division. It's really for everyone. There is a sense that the divine may be found in any way at anything. And it could be, you can be one of the things that I find most attractive is that one can be agnostic, even atheistic, and still be Hindu. One can, which is such anathema by a Western point of view, that one, I can believe fundamentally in the identity of a deity within a murti, within an image, or I can believe in just sort of a broad spectrum of ethereal divinity that doesn't have its form, and that's still Hinduism. I can view God through a mantra, or through the ringing of a bell, or through the performance of a dance, or I can view the divinity through very strong Vedic ritual, and each is as valuable as the next. None is more important. None is, in the general Indian point of view, is considered to be superior to the other. They're all viable.
So let me read some lines that struck me. And you describe Hinduism as a very individual religion that the individual chooses.
Yeah.
There's no one right way. There's no truth with a capital T. And you wrote on page 31, for those of our viewers and listeners who are interested, with all these individual perceptions and traditions, it is easy to understand why definitions of Hinduism have baffled so many Westerners. In fact, Hinduism is not one codified religion, but a compilation of hundreds, perhaps thousands of smaller belief systems.
Absolutely. And so what I do is travel in India, district to district, village to village, state to state, and try to absorb as much as possible, to witness and absorb as much as possible those differences of belief, those ways in which people express their belief in the divine. And I find it fascinating, always have. So I've been in India 54 years, and I find it fascinating, just fascinating. It's never in the slightest bit boring.
So now, one of the things you talk about in the book, and you make a point that many have made, and I make repeatedly to foreigners, is that the word Hindu itself simply means of India. That's the term the Arabs used to describe people living by the banks of Indus and East.
The Indus, yeah.
Al-Hind, right? And they still call many Muslims from India Hindi.
Yeah.
Those from Al-Hind. So the word itself is just a term used for people living in the subcontinent. And I'm interested, and I know you crossed over to India on your when you were 20, a few days before the war. We discussed this in our previous F4 talks we did. But I'm interested in the practical aspects that you've just described in more philosophical terms, but in terms of how does it manifest in a village? As you point out, that someone may worship Ram, another person may worship Durga, another person this is in the same family. The husband may choose one thing, the wife may choose another, and the child may choose a third or one.
Which is so different than Western belief systems.
Correct. Yeah. Correct. So how does it work in, say, any of the photographs that you've taken? How does it work in pick a village in Kerala and walk us through how would religion weave itself through the warp and woof of life in that village in Kerala?
Yeah, I mean, it's an unexpected question as regards to Kerala particularly, and it could be really any state in any region. It doesn't, certainly Kerala Malayali culture has its own unique ways of expression and seeing things, but if I'm trying to look for a generalization of a broad aspect of how Hinduism might be interpreted through the lens of one Indian village in Kerala, and of course Malayali villages are very, very different from those of other regions, but it's that sense of identity. It's the sense that the community in which I live is an extension of myself. I am a product of my heritage of generations that have lived in this spot, perhaps for, if not for centuries, if not only centuries, it could be for 1,000 years or more. And that identity is inextricable from the land, the earth, the trees, the water, the canals, if it's Kerala, the rivers that go through it, the ocean that's right there, the jungle, the weather, the seasons, the fruit, the production of the land, the coconuts or the mangoes, which are different there, the papaya, the rice, whatever it is, all of that creates not only the flavors of my village and my community, but who I am. And every element of that, every aspect of it is sacred. Every aspect is believed to be, by most villagers, to have a sacred entity. And one could dissect it down to the grains of rice that grow in a paddy and the water that's there. Each stalk of rice has its own entity that is spiritual. That together, collectively, a paddy is tens of thousands of small entities. Collectively, the paddies create a whole landscape around the village, and so do the coconut trees. And then the homes themselves are made up of sacred elements. Each aspect of the house, if it is mud, and with in Kerala, perhaps a thatched roof, those are sacred. The wood beams that go into the making it are carved by hand, perhaps by someone in the village who put energy into it that is sacred. So everything that goes into creating my house is different from your house, and our houses are different from the next neighbor's house, and each one has its entity, and each is filled with the spirit of the not only the Gram Devata, which is the deity of community, but the Kula Devata, the deity that is the home. It is
very quickly. Gram in Sanskrit would mean the village,
the village,
the community.
Yeah, the village.
Gram Devata means the divine force of the village, or the deity of the village.
Yeah.
And Kul literally is the clan, and that is the deity of the clan.
That's
and
right.
Often, because of India's caste system, the two could be different.
Yeah, very different. And one doesn't, you worship them often separately and intertwined. And then, the deities expand out of the Gram Devata, the deity that is the region or the district or the state or the area, the deity that becomes pan-Indian in a sense. And that's where you have a individual deity, an individual identity of the Gram Devata that might be, say, a form, considered to be a form of Durga, of the goddess. But she has her own name, which is the name of the village or related to the name of the village, and has her own shrine. And then she is believed to be an extension of the more universal form of Durga.
So explain to our non-Hindu and non-Indian viewers and listeners, who is Durga and what does she represent?
So Durga is the divine feminine strength and power, Shakti. One of the interesting things in Hinduism, as so different from Western Abrahamic belief systems, is that the feminine is considered, if anything, stronger than the masculine. The goddess Durga, and in her other form as Kali or Chandi, or there are many, many names for her, is she who destroys evil that male divinity cannot conquer. It's up to the feminine to conquer it. So in Indian systems, traditional systems, the feminine is never considered the weaker sex. In some ways, it's the stronger sex that must be subdued in patrilineal systems to keep it from endangering whatever the men think of as their rights. But nevertheless, women are not, and the feminine Shakti is not considered weak, which it is in the sort of Judeo-Christian concept of Eve as being from the rib of Adam. That's
left
so
rib.
foreign.
Apparently, the left rib. Important.
The left rib, yes, exactly, left. And so, but that concept of strength, in my work in India, in documenting shrines, in thousands of shrines in India, literally thousands, because I've traveled in every Indian district just about, and doing that work for 54 years, I find that far more the deity of community, the Gram Devta, is feminine, not masculine. There's much more worship of the feminine, but Western interpretations of Hinduism miss that and talk about the primary male deities, Shiva, Vishnu, and their many forms, Brahma perhaps, but their many forms as being the dominant and the dominating. But that's not really true. It really isn't true. The feminine is that to which in most parts of India, and there are some exceptions. There's an exception to anything you say about India, but there is that sense of the feminine, even in the very strongly male-dominated communities, even up in northwestern India and elsewhere, where the patrilineal system is so strong that women are much more subdued than in the South, for example. Even there, the primary deity is often feminine, not masculine.
So what you're describing in some ways is a characteristic of pagan traditions, because let's go to pre-Christian Greece.
Yeah.
You have Zeus.
Yeah.
You have Athena.
Yeah.
Athena is the goddess of war and wisdom. So in a way, she's like Durga.
If you go into pre-Christian European cultures, it's the same thing. You know,
so in a way, you could argue, and this is my theory, that India is the one pagan society that survived the Abrahamic onslaught.
How fascinating. Yeah, I think you're right. I enjoyed talking with you, Atul, so much, because I'm constantly learning, and I don't
know. I'm learning from you. I'm not a scholar. You're the scholar. Okay.
I'm a something. I don't even know if I'm a scholar. I'm just kind of out there.
You're a fantastic writer and a great photographer. I cannot claim parity with you after reading this. Okay. Those of you who haven't read it should read it and buy it. Okay.
It's Yale University Press. So the other aspect that we just sort of edged on is the sacred within nature is essential to understand Hinduism. That elements of nature are considered worthy of worship, and just one second, and larger, greater elements of nature, a river like the Ganga, a mountain, but also sacred trees. There are trees in worship in almost every community in India as being repositories of divinity. And then you were just making, and this is why I'm bringing it in and why I asked you just to wait a second, is that was true of, we'll call it pagan or pre-Christian Europe. You know, the sacred trees were ubiquitous. They were everywhere. And those shrines, those sacred tree shrines, were one of the first things that the Christians cut down, because it was too strong in resistance to the spread of Christianity. It was too threatening. And in India, they've not been cut down. Even with the changes in the movements of growth of urban India and the incursions of Islam and Christianity, those sacred elements of nature cannot be subdued. They are primary to Indian belief systems.
So yes, but they are no longer exist in Pakistan, which used to be a part of India till 1947. They no longer.
Are you sure they don't exist?
Hardly any. The Wahhabi Islam, the fundamentalist Islam that is there in Pakistan is particularly keen to obliterate all connection to.
And it's true that, the contemporary India, with the building of roads, I've documented quite a number of sacred tree shrines that have been just unceremoniously wiped out by building a national highway right through it.
Yeah.
And then somehow it regrows and reforms itself just slightly away because the people, it's too important to them.
Yeah. But let's go back to what you just said. And I couldn't help thinking of Apollo and the laurel tree. I couldn't help thinking about the Norse gods, Poseidon, the god of the seas. After all, Zeus is quite like Indra. Like Indra, he's a ladies' man.
Yeah.
Indra doesn't even leave other people's wives. And I think Zeus is a bit like that. He's of that ilk. And for me, the important thing that I take away from pagan traditions is that there's no distinction between the divine and the human. Human beings are like the gods, and the gods are like men.
Yeah.
Gods are not interpreted as other.
No.
And gods are personifications in some ways of both the light and dark of the human condition and the human archetypes.
And so you said the light and dark, and that is the other thing that is so, one of many other things that's of such primary difference. It is that aspect of sin, mortal sin, carrying one's sin, atoning for one's sins constantly, that we are in the Christian heritage basically evil, or we are so easily brought down by evil, and that if we do not atone for our sins, we are damned to hell, and hell is envisioned as a physical place, as is heaven in dichotomy to it. The absolute opposite. But in the traditional Hindu belief, there isn't a heaven and hell. It's we are part of existence, and we will be reborn. And that aspect of being reborn, maybe we are reborn in a way that shows an atonement for the things that we have done in this life, if we have been particularly selfish or disregarding of the welfare of our families or our people or whatever it might be. But it's not the same. It really is not the same as the perceptions of hell and that aspect of guilt, which is embedded in Christian systems of that belief that I am sinful and I am wrong and I have to overcome that. And I find that so attractive in India.
So let me stop you. So the idea of sin, and the idea of sin comes from this idea that God creates the world, all right? And God creates Adam and Eve. Eve is tempted by the apple.
Right.
And therefore, there is original sin, and both Adam and Eve are cast out of the Garden of Eden.
Right.
So number one, there's a dichotomy right at the start between God and man. God is above man.
Yes, exactly.
God is not one with man.
Right. It's that pyramidal thing, not at the top.
It's an authoritarian.
Yeah.
It's a pyramid with God on top. And two, God is vengeful.
Yes. Absolutely.
God is unforgiving.
Yes.
And three, it is Manichaean. It's black and white.
Mm. Mm.
Either you are a sinner, you follow Lucifer, or you are a nice believer.
And there's the one other aspect. There's one other, and that is that there is only one right way.
Correct.
And it's my right way. It's not yours.
Correct.
And
it's
whatever yours is,
T.
right. And you will be damned to hell because I have the right way. So there's this attitude of superior privilege. I have the right way. You are wrong and damned to hell. And if you don't conform to my way of believing, you'll end up in hell. That is really foreign to the Indian psyche. There is definite. I'm not trying to.
But look, that is foreign even to traditional Roman belief. That's
yes. But Roman wasn't Christian. But yes.
That's Native Americans are like that too, because it's a personification of natural.
Yes,
forces.
Precisely.
African beliefs were like that.
Yes, of course. Global. Yeah. And so the idea, I'm not trying to idealize Hinduism. It's not that there's a lot of inequality, but the idea that my way is the only way is not part of that lack of equality. That's not what it is. It's not. So I think also a lot of foreign attempts to understand and write about India are so much through the lens of that Western idea that there is one right way, that they equalize or make equivalate. That's a wrong word. I can't think of the right word. But the idea that Indian systems, social systems, caste systems are about that, and they are not. They are not. There may be inequality. There is inequality. There may be inequities, and there are. But that's not what it's about. It's not my superior as a being that you are unable to reach the divine. It's not that kind of judgment. It's a judgment, perhaps in the sense that I am superior because of my heritage in this form of work, or this kind of privilege for doing something, my profession. But it's not a judgment that those people who I might consider less than me are less able to have access to the divine.
Let me explain it in practical terms, okay, very quickly. Let's say you're upper caste, you're Indian. You're a Brahmin or you're a Rajput like me. You may look down on those who do not come from exalted birth like you.
Yes, absolutely.
All right? So the stratification is obviously something endemic to the Indian social structure.
It is.
However, I do not, or even the upper caste will not look down on you because you worship Shiva instead of Ram.
No, that's it.
Or Durga instead of Hanuman.
Yeah, no, not at all. Never.
Whilst in Islam, or Christianity, if you are Christian, you're all worshipping the same God and you're all part of the chosen people. You're not necessarily looking down on the people in the same church for being of inferior birth, although given the human condition, if you're an aristocrat in England, you're not going to treat the peasant as your equal. But you certainly think that those who do not belong to your faith, if you're particularly religious, have to be saved. You have to save their souls from eternal damnation and hell.
Yes, and what is particularly, to me, reprehensible, honestly, to put it out there, is that there's the belief that if I am raised and I have seen the light, because my heritage has seen the light as a Methodist, that any practitioner of as a Baptist is not going to get to heaven, not to the way that I do, nor will a Catholic. And Catholics will look down upon Methodists or Presbyterians, and Baptists will look down upon Methodists and Presbyterians and Christians.
Let's give our listeners and viewers a little bit of history. 1517, 95 thesis on the Church of Wittenberg.
Yeah.
All hell breaks loose in Europe.
Yeah.
And the fire that is lit, the torch that is lit that year by Martin Luther, only ends in 1648 after the 30 Years' War. So, yes, there is one history of Europe which is Renaissance, Enlightenment, development of rule of law. That is all true. But there's a parallel history which is about Reformation, religious wars, nationalism, imperialism.
That's right. And it continues today.
Well, yes. But similarly with India, and you said the practical worship of Hinduism, one of the sections you have in the book is the soul of family, worship in the home. And, or even, if you want to use the word Hinduism, Jainism, Buddhism, even Sikhism, doesn't matter. Yeah. The Indo-Gangetic spiritual traditions, basically some forms of paganism, or Indian forms of paganism. I think the difference there is that there the ills come from this extreme social stratification. Caste sometimes doesn't escape even if you convert to Islam or Christianity.
That's right.
And there it is not necessarily the Hindus turning on Sikhs and Sikhs turning on Jains and Jains turning on Buddhists and Buddhists turning on Hindus, etc. There it is more a case of, I am of superior birth, therefore you should go clean the toilets. And in your next birth, if you clean the toilets well enough, you will be born in my place.
Yeah.
Correct me if I misspoke or...
No, I think you're right. And you brought up the concept of the home as being the center. I think that's...
no, that's your concept. That's your chapter. I just read it.
Yes, I know. But you brought up the concept.
Yeah.
That's what I find. I find that even though the temple is important and the shrine is important, most of worship, most rituals take place in the home, not in the temple, not in the shrine. For most Hindus, and in most cases,
right here to demonstrate. Here is a chap praying.
Yeah.
It seems somewhere in Rajasthan.
It is, yeah.
And that's basically a corner of his house, correct?
That's right. And every home has that in one form or another, and it changes home to home to home to home to home. And in most cases, it is the woman who governs the rituals that take place take place in the home. And that is important to understand too. While as in our culture, it is not the women. In the Western cultures, it is not the women who are considered the superior there. Yeah.
Yeah. And so very quickly, this photograph, it's Lakshmi and Ganesh.
Yeah.
Lakshmi is the goddess of wealth.
Yeah.
Lakshmi is also the consort of Vishnu.
Right.
Lakshmi is also someone associated with the wife. That's why the wife is often called Griha Lakshmi, the wealth of the household.
Yeah.
And Ganesh is the god of good beginnings. He's the son of Shiva.
Yeah.
And of course, Shiva chops his head off.
Yeah.
And then Parvati, his consort, goes mad. And then she tells Shiva, you have to bring him back to life. And he asks his girls, who are basically high on opium and God knows what, bhang or what knows. And they go out and they find a baby elephant and they bring a baby elephant's head. They chop off a baby elephant's head and bring it. And he puts this elephant head in this creature. What I love about this myth is that the god of good beginnings begins life with an absolute unmitigated disaster, begins life dying. And therein are all the contradictions.
Beheaded,
Beheaded by his own dad. He's brought to life by his mom out of a statue or something like that. But in a way, it is a crazy myth, and you can laugh at, what a cock and bull story. This god with the head of an elephant, and yet this god with the head of an elephant rides a mouse.
Yeah.
So what this is personifying is how the mighty may need the weak, the strong may need the meek. Yeah. How the entire ecosystem is interrelated. How the god of good beginnings and of wisdom and of writing, because by myth, Ganesh is the chap who writes the Mahabharata.
Right.
All of which is interconnected. And that it is that interconnectedness.
It is that interconnection.
There's a line there's a line that there's a sentence, on page 28 that struck me. And I was thinking of the Ganesh story to some degree let me turn to page 28. I am on page 28, and you write the focus and means of worship are many, but the process has a common thread. It acknowledges one of the fundamental principles of Hinduism. God is a universal force, indivisible, and yet infinitely divisible. The one and the many, the perfect mixture of all facets of existence. And you also earlier talked about how God is a mix of the masculine and feminine.
Oh yes, and that Ardhinarishvara is just wonderful. That concept.
Explain the idea. Most people won't know it.
There's a belief that God is equally masculine and feminine, and so Shiva is often portrayed as Ardhinishvara, which is half male, half female, exactly. And when you see an image of being a sculpture of Ardhinarishvara or a painting, you'll see the one half is absolutely beautifully feminine, and the other half, straight down the middle, is strongly masculine. This buff man, but it's. One half is no more important than the other half. That's so different than the concept of God the Father and the Son. God the Father and the Son. It's not God the Father and Mother and the Son and Daughter. And there is Mary, and that one can find that soft.
That's what I said. They do have Mother Mary. They
but she's not God.
Okay,
she is not God. And she is worshipped in a sense, but not with the same identity as God. And for a Christian, God may be considered to be everything by some, but not an identity as a deity. But nevertheless, he is viewed by all traditional Christians as masculine, as he is in Judaism and as he is in Islam. And that's very, very different. May I have permission to read the preface to the book?
You certainly do. But before that, I want you to, when we are talking of practical Hinduism, this is a question that was in the back of my mind. I want you to explain both East and West. One of the aspects of practical Hinduism is the Durga Puja. I went to high school in Kolkata. My mother grew up in Kolkata. And she likes Kali, okay? As you know, the goddess of death and destruction. She likes Kali and Durga and then everyone else. She likes all of them, but Kali and Durga are, I think, her top choices. And Durga Puja is huge, as everyone knows. The 10 days, and then the image is consecrated or immersed.
Visarjan, yeah.
Visarjan. Yeah. And then on the West, you have Ganesh.
Yeah, and the Visarjan. Yeah.
Also the Visarjan.
Yeah.
So please tell us a bit more your observations about these celebrations and the pandals, and you photograph them. You've beautiful
Yeah,
photographs.
thank you. But it's that concept that the divine is such a part of our lives. Let's honor that. Let's make our entire life this part of our being.
So here are the images. Beautiful.
Thank you. Let's make this part of our lives. Let's honor this deity that means so much to us. So let's either make ourselves, or more often, let's commission a sculpture to be made that represents the deity, Durga Puja you're talking about in Kolkata. And let's make a shrine that is, all of our community joins together, and we create this temporary, not a temple, not a shrine in the sense of something that is permanent, the way a temple is, but a pandal is something that is intended to be impermanent. Intended
it's a transitory image. One of the chapters of your book.
And so you worship the deity in her fullness during that time, and you give her all the honor, all the music, all the adoration that you believe in, that expresses your soul. And then after the 8 days or the 10 days or whatever it is for that regional ritual, you take that most often clay image of the sculpture of the deity. It must be made out of ephemeral substance. So most often it's clay. And you take it, and it could be this big, or it could be as tall as 2 to 3 stories high, and literally, and you carry it through the streets in procession, and you take it to a water source, most often a river, but it could be like those Ganapati images in Mumbai and elsewhere, the ocean, and you take it in. And as a part of a ritual and as part of prayer, you give it back to nature. You give it back to the water, and it dissolves. It goes back to the substance. It's maybe, one could say, a Hindu relationship to earth and dust to dust, but it goes back. And then the next year it's pulled up again from the earth and made again, sculpted again, and worshipped again. And that quality of recycling like that is very close to the idea that we as human beings are recycled. We are reborn. We live this life, we live it fully, we go on, we diminish, we die, we're cremated, and we go back into the earth, and another child is born, and that child has his or her life and then is recycled. So it reflects that. And it's a quality to me of the way that earth in India is sacred, but it's sacred because it holds not only those images that have gone back into it, but everything, that all those layers of civilization are part of it and should be viewed as sacred. The West, we look at the earth as something to till that might give us crops or to build upon, but it's not. It's rarely considered sacred, maybe among Native American cultures, maybe among a few New Age cultures and people, but not by the general population of the West anywhere.
So not
do we consider the earth to be divine?
Yeah, not by the religious and not by the new religions of economics and anthropology, etc.
No. And that whole concept of manifest destiny, you can't have manifest destiny, which believes that you have a right to destroy anything for your benefit, and believe that earth is divine, or that nature, the trees, that every element about it. And certainly there is hypocrisy in India.
I was just about to say that we probably have the most polluted rivers in the world. So there's a dichotomy
and ground,
as well.
and forests, and others. Yeah. So
and
it's not
cities certainly. I mean, cities certainly.
Yeah.
Rivers definitely. Air in Delhi is now the most polluted in the world. So how do you explain that? How can this pagan pagan tradition, or many multiple traditions, which personify natural forces. What is Indra but a personification of thunder, lightning, and rain? Okay, what is Pavan but the wind?
No, it's true. I think it's all gotten out of proportion by the rapid overpopulation. And one can look at, I mean, I don't think that'll be the next discussion about the development of history and what has happened in history. But if you look at Indian tradition, Indian history, and you realize that there was no overpopulation for several thousand years, pardon me?
For centuries, even when the British came here having crazy tiger shoots.
I said for several thousand years, and then suddenly you have the increase. Mm-hmm. The question is why? Why is it suddenly more than 10 times, 12 times what it was 2 centuries ago? Why is it suddenly when there was never any growth? There was never any growth. There was a little bit up and a little bit down, a little bit up and a little bit down, but it remained around 100 million from the time of Alexander all the way up to the beginning of the 18th century, beginning of the 19th century. So what happened?
Modern science, sanitation, immunization. I don't know.
I mean, we will make that part of another one if you choose to do it. But
we will.
It's the suppression of education. It's the suppression of natural education, and it's the intentional suppression of natural education for the few to rule the many, and that kept India from growing at its natural. I mean, growing. It grew as a population, but I meant it didn't modernize in the same way at the same time as the rest of the world, and it was kept from modernizing intentionally. And so, from the mentality, except for the chosen few.
So before we get to your preface, there are two things that came up in our conversation before this interview, and you talked about how you look at practical Hinduism. You believe in you believe in experience, the experiential Jungian approach, wherein when you look at a shivling, you don't see a phallus. And we talked about certain scholars, say Wendy Doniger, who's a brilliant scholar.
Absolutely fabulous, yeah.
Yeah, but perhaps sexualizes certain...
I just think that, for example, speaking of the linga, which the linga is the image, the icon, primary icon of Shiva, which is one of the two primary worship fields of divisions of Hinduism that is most widely in worship.
Very quickly, Vishnu is... You can think of Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesha, the Trinity. Brahma is the creator, and Vishnu is the preserver. He sleeps under a 1,000-headed snake, Sheshanag, with his consort as his companion, Lakshmi. Vishnu is born on Earth to fight people who lose a sense of proportion. They're not necessarily demons. Like Ram is an incarnation, an avatar, since we have a film in Hollywood called Avatar of Vishnu. And he kills Rama, who is the king of Sri Lanka, who's very scholarly, who's brilliant, who's out of the world magnificent, but loses a sense of proportion. Anyway, so Vishnu is the preserver. And Shiva is the destroyer, who's an ascetic,
creator and destroyer.
Creative destruction. Yeah. So he realizes when the world has come to the end of a cycle, he goes on his cosmic dance of destruction, the Tandava, and his consort is Parvati, born of the mountains. And Shiva is often in meditation. He's also fond of some inebriation. He has a whole bunch of followers who are eccentric, hippie-ish, you could say, and he sits on a mountaintop, topless, meditating. And nonconformist. You could also argue that he is, in some ways, both the combination of asceticism and also sensuousness.
Yes, but you say nonconformist, but he accounts for 50% of Hindus.
Exactly.
So there is a form of.
I'm saying that in comparing Vishnu and Shiva as symbols, and also he's in the moment. He is the ascetic as well as the god of passion, yada yada. And I'll stop here.
Unlike Vishnu, that other half that is worshipped by the other as the primary deity by the other half of Hindus, the image Vishnu has countless forms that is worshipped in as a murti, as a deity, as an image. But Shiva is almost only worshipped as an iconic something that has been called phallic in Western, primarily in Western religious treatises. And what I was trying to say, and what you brought up, is that for most Hindus that I have interviewed, and that I've interviewed hundreds and hundreds and hundreds all over the country, they don't consider it to be primarily phallic. And it's not that you deny that in some cases it has a phallic form that's quite obvious, but as has been said to me by many parents, we would never ask our small child, particularly our 7-year-old, 6-year-old, 8-year-old daughter, to bow down before a phallus. Hindu, both Vaishnava and Shaivite practitioners tend to be very modest in their in their sexual expression, very modest by Western standards. So the idea that it's horrific to many Hindus that I've met that Westerners consider this primary image to be mostly sexual. It's not. The other aspect of Hinduism is sex is an accepted part of life. So that may seem to be hypocritical, but it's not. It's just that one doesn't necessarily personally flaunt it. You don't flaunt your sexuality.
There's an argument that I've heard many people who are psychotherapists here, including a friend's father who's Jewish, commented that because...
Here being America, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I just wanted to clarify. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And he said that, look, the culture in the US was very puritanical, very repressive.
Very.
And so for many, like Wendy Doniger or others, Hinduism, with its acceptance of sensuousness, was an escape, and therefore, in their love for this unfettered, free-flowing Eastern tradition, they probably went the other extreme from their repressed tradition and sexualized it a little too much.
I think so. And what you mentioned earlier that for me it's experiential, my understanding of Hinduism. I just experience that for the common male and female family member in India, that's not how they view it.
And you said that you're a Jungian, so if that's not how they view it, that is the collective unconscious, and the collective unconscious, therefore, is its own reality. And after all, what is the very idea?
But there is also as a foreigner coming in, the stories of the deities and their sexuality is delightful. There's just there's an open acceptance of sex, and the gods have sex, and it can be quite virulent.
I mean, look at Krishna, who hides the clothes of all the gopis. Yeah, I mean, he's a magnificent example.
Can you imagine Jesus doing that? Yeah,
exactly. Or Indra seducing other people's wives.
Yeah, no, exactly. Oh, I mean, the stories that I've heard from priests and pujaris in small shrines of describing the legends of the deity of that shrine, they're just marvelous. I mean, just delightful, sexuality. But that doesn't mean that the deity is considered and worshipped for his or her sex per se, or personified as sex. It's just that it's part of their sort of, and it goes back to what you were saying earlier. There's not that division between God and the rest of existence, including humankind.
So to sum up, you're not worshiping the deity because of its sexuality, but you're accepting sexuality
as a sexuality
part of the deity's character.
Right. And so going back into that description of the parents with the little girl, you also don't generally talk about sex with a child until they get into adolescence, and then you begin. These days,
Indians have are following Lord Thomas Babington Macaulay. They pretend that they are more British than the British. No sex, please. We are Indians.
Yeah, that's true.
Time for your preface.
Okay, Stephen. So I'm going to read it out of my new memoir, and the reason is that I've abbreviated a little bit. But this is the preface to my book Meeting God that was published in 1999, and this is the beginning of chapter 8 on a. Ooh, I'm in the wrong one. Oh, dear. It should be the beginning of chapter 11. And I somehow, okay, here I am, which is on devotion, that chapter in my memoir, Transformed by India. I had been to Padmapada, a village in eastern India, a number of times previously to visit the family of a close friend. Each time I had been taken to see the sacred tree that embodies the local goddess, the deity of community. This new experience was an unprecedented honor, being allowed to witness the ceremony of invocation in which the dynamic power of the supreme goddess Chandi was requested to subsume and transform that of the local deity. It was a very special ritual, enacted upon rare occasions to implore the aid of the goddess in overcoming a difficult domestic problem. My Indian friend Babu Mohapatra, understanding my wish for insights into Hinduism as preparation for writing this book, the Meeting God book, had arranged this special puja. The entire ritual had taken 2 priests 2 hours preparing and dressing the image of the goddess, drawing a sacred diagram upon it, and building a fire upon it, a havan, and feeding it with clarified butter, ghee, all the while continuously singing her names and praises. Now, that is the cover image of this book. So that is the havan, the fire. That is the sacred tree behind, and that is the priest. I just lost it. As a middle-aged cultural anthropologist and art historian who had already spent over half my life studying India, I prided myself on my objectivity. I might feel empathy towards a particular subject or situation, but as a scholar, I tried to distance myself to observe and take note. Despite my resistance at that moment, as the fire flared brightly and the spirit of the goddess was invoked to enter the tree and be available to the village, I actually felt her presence. I felt a change in the atmosphere, a palpable sense of power vibrating throughout the area surrounding the sacred tree. It was a type of pulsating energy, the strength of which I had never before sensed in my life. I was completely surprised, overwhelmed beyond any expectation. In that one moment, I, who had come as an observer, had become a participant. That insight altered and enriched my perception, allowing me to release decades of self-identity as an objective outsider. by being fully present and receptive to an experience so very different from anything I had been raised to understand. My personal and professional life was changed. I was transformed. From that first experience of participating in the worship of the goddess Chandi in the sacred tree in Odisha, my perceptions have grown immeasurably. Now, when I am invited to attend a sacred ceremony, I no longer withhold myself in critical appraisal. I am fully present with all of my senses to absorb the ritual, to feel the full experience. I realize now that my earlier distance was merely the consequence of my own limitations. The many Indians with whom I have interacted have always invited my full participation. For years, I held myself apart. My Western heritage and my unconscious miscomprehension of image worship blinded me from deeper understanding. Today, I believe that I can still retain a grounding in and deep respect for my American Christian background while being receptive to the many facets of Hindu spirituality. I can admire and even be in awe of the ways in which the sacred permeates the lives of the Hindu people, while still maintaining strong attachments to my own home, family, friends, and culture and ideals. Awareness of one only enriches the other. That's it. So to me, it just was a fundamental change to feel that the power of the goddess, it was vibrant. I mean, I was completely unprepared. I had no idea that could happen. And it really transformed me.
And you've talked in the previous conversation about the powerful female role models you had when you arrived in India as a 20-year-old.
Yeah.
And how they took you in and how they were in a way like the goddess you worshipped.
I suppose. I mean, if you take it from an Indian standpoint, they are an extension of and interwoven with. Yeah. For me, that experience that I talked about there, it took a lot of courage to write that in the book and to publish it, because I'm an anthropologist, and as an anthropologist, one at that stage in 1999 when I published it, in 98 when I wrote it, anthropologists didn't admit to that.
Look, anthropology is an imperial exercise. Yeah. You go there to observe the brownie fuzzy wuzzies and the blacky savages and the yellow-livered, yellow-bellied, small-eyed, little-nosed people, and then write about,
right.
how they chop heads
to immerse yourself in it and actually feel and express your feeling.
Exactly.
To say
it's not an immersive experience. It's a different. Yeah. It is this pretension to objectivity, that we are completely objective and we are almost godlike.
And there is no such thing as objectivity. None. We're all subjective. Everything. Yeah. And so India, the transformation for me that I write about in the book, Transformed by India, is that immersion and the way in which, by letting go of my preconceptions constantly, India has always presented itself to me in a friendly and welcoming way. I mean, of course, there are exceptions to that, but people welcome me in, always have. It's my own reservations. It was my own attitude that I came from, whatever it is that I believe myself to be, versus just allowing myself to be present and immerse, as you used the word, that change has come, and which the gifts that India has given me. Yes, please. Yeah, go ahead.
Stephen Huyler, pleasure.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
I appreciate
great talking to you. And we'll have you back for many, many, many more discussions.
Thank you. I just love this. It's so much fun. Yeah, it's just so much fun. Thank you. I really appreciate your perceptions and the way in which you see things. So it's interesting. Yeah.
I have little ability and even lesser intelligence, and I hope our viewers and listeners will forgive my many transgressions. And if you do forgive my transgressions, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. Please. And listen to us, and we'll have many enriching conversations with the great minds of our times. And we, of course, have been speaking to the author of Meeting God, this wonderful book.
I'm honored. Thank you.
By Yale University Press. So, we've met a god of our times. Stephen Huyler, you're a god. They'll build a temple to you in India one day.
Namaskar. Thank you. Thank you.
Join the conversation at Fair Observer and subscribe to our YouTube channel.